Hey, this week on This Is Gravel, we finally beat the rain and got out on bikes.
Yes!
Hey, welcome to this episode of This Is Gravel. I'm producer Matt, joined by
Neil.
Neil.
What's up?
The Minister of Gravel.
Minister of Gravel, yeah. I'm the guy that's half awake today. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty good today. It's warmed back up here in the Flint Hills of Kansas.
Finally, yes.
It's the temperatures broke from the weekend. And speaking of the weekend, Neil, what have you been up to?
Oh, boy. Had a lap the lakes this weekend here in Kansas. Another one of our Emporia races. There's a lot that kind of goes on in this area, not just Dirty Kansas.
Correct.
And so got out there, and this was my wife's first event.
Okay.
And so rode the 100K with her the entire day.
And just to jog viewers' memory, she picked up a journeyman a couple months ago and has started.
Yep, she's been riding for just over 3 months.
Okay.
Little ambitious, decided to go into this race with only 400 miles in these 3 months.
Okay.
So, I mean, she's barely really had a whole lot of time to get on the bike. Granted, she, takes care of the two kids, gets them, to school, picks them up. And so she gets her time to get out there on the bike, but I would say not nearly maybe the amount of time that you would need to have before jumping into an event like this. But it was a learning experience. Yeah. And we had a good time.
I will say Lap the Lakes is never an easy race. Last year it was in September, I think, right?
Yeah,
about a month earlier.
Yeah.
It initially started on this weekend a couple of years ago. Yep. And I think out of all of them, 3 or 4 races he's put on, years putting it on, I think the weather's been different absolutely every year.
Yeah, I know that 2 years ago, neither of us got to make that year's race.
Yeah.
I think we were a little bit busy with somebody's wedding.
Someone got married that weekend?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And so, but it was a beautiful day. That I do remember. I do remember it being a gorgeous day at the wedding. And so he had a great day for the race that year. 2 years ago, I want to say was a windy day, if I'm not mistaken. I wasn't part of last year's race. I know that you were there, but if I remember correctly, it was pretty windy.
Last year was rough. Last year it was kind of one of those fluke days where it had been gorgeous fall weather, 70 degrees every day for a couple of weeks or a week leading up to it. Then it was one of those fluke days, hits 90, the wind turns on out of the south, and it was lonely.
90 in October. Oh, boy.
Well, it was September last year. It was a couple of weeks earlier.
Either way. Ooh, that's
yeah.
It's pretty warm. And then this year, like I say, we get something totally different.
Yeah.
It was in the upper 30s at the start of the race. And by the end, for us, it was up in the 50s. Yeah. And you really had, I would say, a wide variety of experiences throughout the day with the weather.
Yeah. So you supported your wife, Brandy. You guys did the 100K. I went out with some friends and did the 200K. And if you'd seen the maps released early in the week, it was originally 2 different routes. But, I mean, everything around Emporia last week flooded. So Emporia is a town lined by 2 rivers. Yes. And so when the rivers come out, it makes it very difficult to get on the gravel out of town. But I think Bobby helped them out and helped plan some new routes. And it was actually 2 laps for the 200K, 100K each lap, and we did that. So,
yeah, it made it for a different experience. It was kind of interesting for us because we'd been at the back all day. Again, my wife probably had the fewest miles of anybody that was out there on the course last Saturday. And so we got out there, and it was really weird for a long part of the day. We were at the back, and there wasn't a soul in sight, and it was just us two enjoying ourselves, stopping, taking pictures of deer legs that were sitting on the side of the road, wide variety of other things, just enjoying ourselves. And then all of a sudden you get to the point where we're starting to get, near Americus, and all of a sudden you get a couple of the relay guys flying up past us.
45, 50 miles in.
Yeah, then even probably further than that, I think. Right? Well, Americus was about 50. Yeah. And then you get folks like Mike Marchand flying by and some of the other really fast guys.
On their second lap.
Yes, on their second lap. And so it was kind of nice at that point of the day where for her, she'd already gone past her longest ride ever.
What was her longest ride, you think?
Coming into this, her longest ride was 40 miles.
Okay.
And so, to go out and do 64, she's almost doubling what was her longest effort up to this.
Well, and I know one of the things talked about on endurance cycling is you want to make sure you've done 2/3 of what you're attempting. Yeah. So she's done that. Yeah. She checked that box.
Yep, right there. And so it was nice, though, to see them. Every single person that came by at that point, I mean, these are all people that are racing for podiums, whether it be on the relays or whether it be the individuals. Every single one of them slowed down. You guys got everything you need. You guys doing good. They knew we were at the back of the 100K. And it was just awesome to see that kind of support, that kind of care out of our community in the gravel cycling world.
What was it like? Because I know when you're getting ready for a race, it's kind of all you can think about the week before leading up to it. And you've pretty much done that by yourself for all your races. Yeah. What was it like having somebody else in the house also kind of on that same pins and needles?
See, it was different for me, and maybe I should have tried to have more of that pins and needles stress for myself because it would have maybe turned out better. But I was very relaxed because I'm going out riding 60 miles.
Yeah, I mean, you did Gravel Worlds, you did DK this year, so you got a lot of miles under you.
I'm not riding at my pace for this ride. I'm not going to go out there and try to do 16 miles an hour or 15. I'm going to just kind of kick it back a notch and ride with my wife and go at her pace, and it is what it is. And so to me, I was just like, it's Saturday. I'll get dressed. I'll throw things on the bike and go. And because I did that, I probably misplanned. Well, I did misplan some things for both of us. I did not plan on being out there as long as we were. I did not plan on having probably some of the proper nutrition, being that it was a lot colder day.
Yes.
Then, on a colder day, I need more substance food than I need, liquid things. And so usually I do liquid nutrition during the summer, but colder day, I need something solid to put in my gut. And so made a mistake for me. On the other hand, my wife, like you say, was on pins and needles the whole week. Yeah. And so I was kind of trying to teach her some of the lessons that I've learned from others in the past, just to be calm, to not overly stress out, to not get yourself wound up, to not, basically burn a bunch of energy in a stress period, and just to know that it will be okay. If the weather stinks, we're still going to ride bikes. If the weather's awesome, we're still going to ride bikes. We're going out to ride bikes. It is what it is, and we'll get through the day. And so I kind of tried to keep preaching that to her throughout the week, but it was different seeing the other side inside the house and saying, man, was this what I was like 4 or 5 years ago when I was doing every race? And I'm sure I was. Yeah. And so it was pretty interesting.
What was it like that morning when we wake up and we're in a fog? I mean, literally, we were in a fog. You could see about across Commercial Street here, about 150 feet before the fog really kicked in.
Yeah, I got up early in the morning. I was up about 5 o'clock, and
I tried to. I was running late that morning.
I got up pretty early. I wanted to make sure that I did have some things lined up. I was also running out to go get some donuts, to go get coffees, all the necessities.
You had donuts Saturday morning?
Always have donuts before a race, always.
Huh.
It's my go-to. I don't know why, but I love donuts. So now that we have a new Dunkin' Donuts here in town, I went and visited that, and it was fantastic. Got myself some donuts, got the wife some donuts, and
not me.
Sorry.
I'm putting an order in next time.
Definitely put an order. Tell me, I'll be out there. I mean, but yeah, no, got up the donuts, but I mean, I couldn't believe how foggy it was. I was kind of like, crud. I'd already said, don't worry about headlights. It'll be light by the start of the race because it's 8 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock, we have sunlight. The sun has risen. We did not. And so there was just a lot of last minute kind of things that came in because of that fog, because you weren't expecting to not be able to see much more than a couple 100 feet in front of you.
Correct. So. Yeah, it was, for me, it was definitely a very interesting day, very different from the race I did last year for Lap the Lakes. And it's funny, I think I've done 2 races now. I've been doing Gravel Guru for 3 years, but I'm always out there with a camera and covering them, but it's fun to get out and race them.
So what did you learn between last year's event, how you raced it? Because I know last year you kind of got out really fast, really hard with some of those guys, and between last year's and this year's race.
It was probably better that the weather was bad the week of. I mean, that there was so much rain, so I stayed off the bike the week before the race for the most part. You could call that tapering. That's not really how you should taper. But I got out Wednesday and Thursday and did a few miles before the race. For me, what was different was we knew that the roads were going to be kind of rough, and by rough I mean sloppy, muddy. Yeah. Darren and Alyssa, good friends, rode with them some. They were registered for the 200K too, and we kind of made an agreement almost to say, hey, let's stick together the first lap. None of us have ever done that many miles where you come home and have to go do the same thing again. Mm-hmm. That was my biggest fear all day was, do I leave the checkpoint? Because, hey, I could take a 100K sticker. I'm done. That was a great day, guys. Let's go home now. Let's go watch football. But instead, we went on and did that. But for me, last year I sprinted out of the gate, got cramps at mile 30, and found out I couldn't hang with the lead dogs.
Yeah, I've been there before in those races where you do loops and you come back into town. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, that is such a hard mental thing to say, hey, I'm going to go back out and do another one of these when I'm 10 feet away from my car.
Yeah.
When I can just put the bike on the rack.
My wife met me at the finish line with supplies there. Or finish line, I mean checkpoint. Yeah. So
it's a tough thing, I think, mentally to get out there, to do it, to want to go back out. Did you guys go back out the second leg altogether?
Yeah. Okay. So we kind of had the agreement that was, hey, let's stick together if we can, but if someone's faster or someone's slower, feel free. We can do our thing. It's a race for a reason. But really, we all kind of had our ups and downs at different points. It was nice on that first lap. We pretty much saw people the whole time on the first lap out there. We turned the hill. We rolled out of town 8:30 or 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. I was running behind. I didn't get to the start line until like 7:40 that morning, which for me, even when we cover races, I want to be there an hour before, But it was probably better because I wasn't standing around getting cold.
Yeah.
But got there. I'm very nervous about technology and how it works. Darren and Alyssa's GPSs wouldn't load the route, which probably helped us stick together, honestly, the rest of the day. For some reason, mine did load the route, and I'd been having trouble with it the last couple weeks before, so that was a good thing for me. And that's kind of why we stuck together. We all had different rough patches, and it's nice to kind of go, hey, let's pull through here. There's a headwind section, especially north of Dunlap out there. But coming into Americus, I know on the first lap, we felt pretty good. Coming into town, I know we jumped on 99. There was, in the last 10 miles, I think about 6 or 7 of it was paved. Was paved. So that kind of gave us some time to get some things figured out. We had to come up Highland Hill twice in the same day, though. I mean, the first time was a lot easier than the second time. But no, our day was pretty good. We come into the checkpoint. Apparently, according to my wife, I wasn't in the best attitude at that moment. But my attitude was, I really don't care what was going on around me. I don't care who came in on the 100 yet. I need to put my bike here. I needed to brush off the mud off the chain, and I used my derailleur cleaner, did all that stuff, lubed the chain. I had a mental list in my head of what I had to go through, and that's all I cared about right then. I didn't want to stop and talk and socialize because I knew the longer I stood there, the more I had a larger chance of not going back out. And I think we were in about 10 minutes was all we were in at the checkpoint. But yeah, and then the second lap, we go out. We've already seen these roads once today. Yeah. We were really dreading about a 10-mile section there that was sloppy, muddy on the first lap. Amazing what the Kansas wind can do. Mm-hmm. Really dried it out. And now there were still some mud holes in some of the bad spots, when you go down the hill. But nothing like the first lap.
See, that, as we were riding it, that's all I was thinking was like, gosh, I'm glad I'm not having to do this twice because, there was about that 10-mile stretch up by Coahulla that was just sloppy. The mud was kind of just pulling you wherever it chose to pull you. That's when my wife was starting to experience some issues with shifting. I wasn't having that problem for whatever reason.
If you don't have it, you can't have it.
Exactly. And so, but I couldn't imagine saying, okay, I just would finish 60 miles of this, and now I got to go back out and ride in that slop. And so it's good to hear that wind helped dry a lot of that out, especially, for
now,
you guys.
You did fight that wind at certain points, too. So it's a blessing and a curse in different parts on the course.
Yeah, it never was a terrible wind, I would say, really. At least it never felt terrible for me. I'm sure going through it twice and going through it that second time being a little bit later in the day probably was a little worse. But, we've definitely had worse winds here.
By far.
I couldn't imagine, though, again, sitting there at that, especially the fact that this is in our town, that the start line is about a mile from both of our homes, and rolling in and saying a hot shower, a warm bed, a television is a mile that way.
And real food.
Yeah, and real food. And I'm going to go back out in what has been I mean, again, the first loop I could imagine was probably pretty rough, just the conditions between the weather, between the slop and everything to say.
I will say everybody that did the one loop did wear the dogs out. The dogs did not want to chase the second time by. No. So, nice. It was nice having some mental notes like that. We knew where we were going to push hard on the second lap, so you could really back off and reserve some. So then it was nice once you've reserved some to find out that the mud's not bad. But you talked about the derailleur kind of jumping around. Mm-hmm. I will say I've covered enough events, land run, for instance, where I've seen the derailleur carnage and all of that was my number one worry of the day. I probably spent a lot of mental capacity worrying about my derailleur. I know I asked Darren a couple times, hey, everything looked clean back there, because it's hard to see your derailleur from your bike, and just helping each other out, looking through there. First thing I did when I jumped off at the checkpoint out by Lake Caholam, 30 miles, was get that brush out, knock anything off, because if you're knocking all that mud off that's on there, it's more to stick to. Yeah. So that was my really number one concern, is I didn't want mechanical problems. I knew I was probably up to it if everything lasted. So
worst case scenario, just convert to single speed, right?
Yeah.
Because that's fun.
Yeah, that wasn't. I did say at one point, I remember saying, if I have to convert to a single speed in the first lap, it's only going to be a one lapper that day. So how'd your nutrition do?
Nutrition was different. Again, it was tough for me, like I say, because on a colder day, I really need more solids. And I was in planning for me to ride at a certain pace, basically planning my normal race, and then not realizing, oh, hey, by the way, you're not going to be riding your normal pace. And so nutrition was a little bit tough because I could have used a lot more solids out there. Like I say, usually like to stick to liquid nutrition, but on a day where I'm not pushing, I could have probably ate whatever out there and been fine. And so I struggled a little bit with that. Brandy struggled with it too. But she's at a point where she's going to struggle with nutrition. Yeah. Again, she's done 400 miles before the race. And so I told her, I said, we don't know what works best for you. And then being cold and drinking basically most of your nutrition, for me at least, getting older, that spells a lot of bathroom breaks. And so that was
when it was colder.
Too. Yes, especially when it was colder. Yes, it was, oh boy. And even as it warmed up, I struggled to warm up because I wasn't riding at my normal pace that I was used to. I dressed like I was going to be riding 16, 15 miles an hour. And so there were certain parts of me that were very cold throughout the day, even when it started to warm up. And it was, like I said, there were some challenges with that. Again, could I have done better on nutrition? Yeah, but I would say that honestly, 90% of the time I could have probably done better because there are certain things that I either A, forget, or B, just I get, on a fast day, I get caught up in the race and maybe forget to fuel properly. So
that was a bright side for us of riding together. We all kind of reminded, hey, are you through a bottle there? Just checking up on one another during the race for us. My new nutrition plan was tailwind on my front forks. First off, I got a Fargo, and I've got 4 bottle mounts on the Fargo. And I'll say last year on this race, I ran out of water between 2 checkpoints.
90 degrees versus...
Yeah. And so I had a surplus of water on me this time. I had a lot of weight I carried that I probably didn't need to, but I didn't want to run out of water. Yeah. That last year I got in a place where I had to conserve and tell myself, every couple miles I can take a sip. Yeah. When you're looking at your GPS. But this year I had 2 bottles of Tailwind on the front fork the whole time. I went through 8 bottles of Tailwind during the race and 6 or 8 goo packets. Okay. I will tell you, I'm a big fan of the French toast goo the first time in the morning. 4 more packs of it later, no. I was over the goo. I started to get, I think you call it gut rot type feeling, middle of the afternoon. And then it's really hard to tell yourself to keep drinking and eating. At the checkpoint, I texted my wife when we were about 10 miles out and said, hey, can you grab a couple things for us? I just wanted a piece of beef jerky, I think something salty, But in reality, your body's not going to process the energy from that quick enough. Yeah. And a peanut butter sandwich. But that was pretty much all that I had there, and a banana. I should have had some real food. It was harder to drink, put my calories in through the Tailwind because it was colder. Yeah. And I get what you mean about the bathroom stops. At one point, it seemed like every 10 minutes you're stopping out there just because you weren't sweating it out.
Yeah, and that was really what was killing me because I wasn't sweating anything out. Riding at, like I say, a lot slower pace, basically all days between 8 to 12 miles an hour, depending on how fast we were going at that given time. I'm not sweating out what I would normally be sweating out if, say, 12 was my low end and, 15, 16, 17 was where my high end would be. And so Since I wasn't sweating it, we were stopping and hanging out with the cows a lot.
Yeah. So speaking of, not sweating it out, I'll say I never lost a layer all day long. Once we got sweaty kind of under the jackets, but every time we're ready to take it off, we turned into the headwind and it got cold. How were you and Brandy dressed? Were you happy with what you did?
She was very happy. Okay. First of all, she dressed, I would say overly warm, but this again was her first race. This was her first time even riding in sub 45 degree temperatures. I mean, even I think sub 50. She hasn't really been out in that yet. And so she dressed really warm, and she was pulling layers off at a variety of different times, whether it be her neck gaiter that she was wearing, pulling that down, whether it was arm sleeves, she was taking those off. And so she was taking off the layers. When we turned in the wind occasionally, it'd be like, ooh, why did I do that? But for the most part, you warm right back up. Me, on the other hand, I dressed really light. I had a very thin base layer. I mean, nothing that was thick, nothing wool, just a thin base layer. Jersey on top and arm sleeves, and then just knee warmers. Yeah. And so I even had an exposed section of probably about 12 inches or so on my calf, basically between the knee warmer and my sock. And so
you don't have that long of legs, Neil.
No, I do. Well, okay, I don't know how far exactly. Maybe let's go 7 to 8 inches. Okay. But anyway, it was exposed, and so I'm riding with that, and I'm like, again, riding at my pace, no big deal. Yeah. Even in a cold day, that really didn't bother my legs so much. But I'll tell you where I got cold was my feet. They got very cold. They got wet that early on, and when they got wet, then they stayed cold.
The thing to remember with the cold was that fog rolled in. So we were at like 98% humidity. So it wasn't really raining. I know my glasses got covered with moisture a couple times, but there was a lot of moisture in the air. Yeah. So you were still wet. Yeah,
wet. And then I eventually did pull off the arm sleeves that I had. It just got too hot in their wool, and because they're wool, I was sweating at that point and said, they got to go. Yeah. But otherwise, I mean, I kept everything else on. And reality is I think I could have kept those on for that, 15, 20 miles that I had took them off. But why not be a little comfortable, right?
Yeah. For me, I think the funny thing is I was wearing the same exact thing I'll be wearing in 2 months when it's 20 degrees out. It's one of those, once you kind of gear up for it, your legs are going to provide the warmth they need, at least in my opinion. But I'm worried about my toes, and I'm worried about my fingers and my head. Yeah. You keep those things warm. For me on the bike, you're going to stay warm. Yeah. One of the new things I added, though, was head protection. Not in the form of a helmet. I've always rode with a helmet, but I'd always had just kind of a cheap, athletic kind of stocking cap that I wore underneath. But I was in the bike shop last week, and Bobby and Leland sold me on the 45 North wool hat. It's got the big ear covers. I will say under the helmet, that was great all day. It kind of regulated. At times, it maybe got a little toasty, but it was also nice having the bill when we were riding into the sun. I'm not one to ever ride with the traditional cycling cap either. Yeah. In the summer, I would ride with a bandana under it just to keep the sweat from running in the eyes. But that was one new piece of gear I purchased. I'll say it's a little more expensive than I usually spend on cycling gear. Usually I'm pretty frugal. I got cameras to buy. But frugal on that. So that was the hat I wore. One other piece I changed up, I've got cycling gloves. A lot of times I like to just use liners and stuff like that, glove liners for like ski gloves, something thin so I can still use the phone, I can use a camera type deal. But this time, I've seen talk on forums, what's the best glove? I went with the $12 Kinko work gloves straight from Bluestem, local farm and ranch store here in town. These are genuine buffalo hide leather. I haven't sealed them yet because we didn't have enough rain to worry about that, but I'll put snow seal on them. And these are my new riding gloves, Neil.
Nice. I mean, hey, they keep your hands warm, to be honest with you. That's what matters. I've got a pair of Kinko. They're called Frost Breakers. Yep. And they've got kind of a grippy material on the palm side, a little bit of a just fleece material on the top, and they keep my hands really warm. And a lot of times during the winter when it's, negative wind chills, that's what I've got on. Yep. And my hands are sweating most of the time. I've kind of gone away from gloves in general. I don't wear any gloves during the summer. I wear the cut-off finger ones or anything like that. I don't really care for the padding. And when it's cold, I mean, even this past weekend, I had gloves on, but would often take them off because I just wasn't comfortable with them. My hands really didn't get too cold in Saturday's temperatures. Like I say, usually for me, if I've got gloves on, it's going to be sub 30 a lot of times. For me in the head, I just threw the neck gaiter up there, kept my ears warm. Like I say, my clothes wouldn't change a whole lot between now and maybe when it was 20 degrees. Once we get below 20, a neck gaiter probably for my actual neck, for my mouth to cover that up as well. Maybe, like I say, wearing the gloves probably a little more frequently.
Yeah, I didn't even think, I've grown up around the farm, so I've always had good work leather gloves around, in the truck type deal. But I never really thought about using them on the bike until I think it was last year. One of the outdoor magazines online did an article on using these type of gloves on ski lifts. So for ski lift operators out west, so I got a pair that are pig skin that are actually lined with wool and stuff on the inside. And when we went cycling on, I think that was New Year's Day, when the bottles all froze up on the bike, my hands were nice and toasty. So
-5 without the wind chill.
I'm ready for anything there. Absolutely love those. Awesome. If you're just getting into cycling, like the high schoolers that need something good for this time of year, absolutely $12. Any hardware store's got them. And then the one thing that really drives me crazy if I get cold are my feet. So I've got a pair of just like the specialized toe covers. They're lightweight that go on. But actually for this day, I woke up and saw that moisture out there, and I decided to go kind of with a full shoe cover. Have you ever used anything like these, Neil?
Yeah, that's when I started actually cycling and doing winter riding. That was pretty much exclusively what I wore.
Yeah, I'll say these ones are very cheap, and this is Frugal Matt here. I plan on buying a pair of, is it gator skin?
Lizard skins?
Lizard skin ones from the bike shop for this year. These are neoprene. I think they were $15 off of an online bike store that a friend bought, and they didn't fit, so I bought them off them. The problem with the neoprene is this is obviously the crank side one, and it just gets shredded there. But absolutely love those. Those come up, just over about the top of the sock line, sealed everything in. Now I'll say when I took them off that night, you could see on the outside of the vinyl shoes all the sweat and moisture that had built up in them. But my toes stayed warm all day, and that's what I needed for.
Yeah, they'll keep you warm. When I used to use those all the time, my feet would stay pretty warm. The reality is you're going to have most pairs, even if you spend a lot of money on them, you're going to have most pairs really for maybe a winter, maybe 2 at max, because they do take a lot of abuse. Like you said, they're on the crank side. It's going to get hit. It's going to get rubbed. If you have any of those races where you wear something like that and you're doing hike-a-bike. For instance, I wore some of those one year at Land Run.
They were trashed.
There's really not a whole lot left of them. And so what I did last winter and what I've been using when it gets really cold are those 45 North Japanthers.
Okay.
And I love those. To be honest with you, I was really kind of like, ooh, should I just wear these Saturday or not? And I said, no, I won't need them.
Yeah.
I wish I would have had them because my feet were honestly, because they got wet, were the coldest part of me, and they would have stayed dry had I had those on.
I did have my second pair of cycling shoes in the car at the checkpoint, just in case we did get caught in a rainstorm. They're not as comfortable as the ones I started with, but they were going to be more comfortable if they were wet.
Yeah.
So, and the final piece of my kit that's new to me that, again, talking about the nutrition running out of water last year, Josh Sprague out at Orange Mud, he was on the show right before Maisie's, sent me one of their hydration vests. It's a 32-ounce bladder in this one. This was great. I run my Garmin InReach on there, so the wife kind of knew where we were, wasn't worried about how we were moving out there, and also wasn't draining my phone battery off my GPS trying to track through that. I've been using this for a couple weeks, and of course I start it right when it starts to cool off, so I don't really need to take bottles on the bike when I do this. Wore this on the outside of the coat. You forget it's there, but it's nice just to pull the spigot and have water.
Yeah, I love the gear vest. As you know, I'm one of the ambassadors at Orange Mud, our dirt unit, as they call it. And I'll tell you, the gear vest is where I started because I don't traditionally like a lot on my back. I've wore different hydration vests in the pack and in the past, and they're heavy. They wear, they pull on my shoulders. At the end of the day, I'm just really struggling even keeping it on. In fact, I've even ditched a couple in the ditch at different times in races and gone back and got them afterwards because they've hurt me. And this is totally different. Like you say, you forget it's there. If you have, pockets in the back, you can still access them because it sits up high. You can load those things down with everything. I mean, they've got 2 pockets on the shoulders, 2 pockets, right here. I've fallen in love with it. I look
forward to it this next spring because this pocket right here might be made for a bottle.
Yes.
But I can tell you there's going to be a camera in there. So easy to pull out while you're riding, not getting in zippers or getting sweaty in a jersey pocket in the back. So
it is amazing. You point out that pocket right there, how much can be fit in this. Like I say, it's for a bottle.
Yeah, but and then there's another one right here.
Down so deep. another one right there.
Yep.
You could carry a camera. You could carry a little Bluetooth speaker if you wanted to listen to music and have it sit right there. I mean, it is loaded with space. It's
fair
awesome
enough.
Best.
Wrapping up our Lap the Lakes experience, Neil, first time doing a race with your wife. What was the experience like when you made it up Highland Hill, kind of rolling through downtown Emporia and seeing the finish line there?
I think we were both at that point honestly ready to be done, but it was a sense of relief. It was cool for me to get to see her complete it. I'll be honest, the day was tough. It was tough for both of us. It was really tough for her, having never gone past 40 miles. You know, her longest ride was 40 and a half mile. I mean, you know, so that was the furthest she had gone. And when we were hitting that checkpoint just past Cajola, about 32 miles, I could tell she was wore.
And it was a rough section right before that.
Oh, yeah, it was awful right before that. That was a muddy, nasty section. You know, some ups and downs, some rough roads. And, you know, in rougher roads than what she's ridden before. You know, you can leave Emporia and do 40 miles and not really hit tough stuff.
Yeah.
Well, here she is 32 miles in, and she's hit some of the toughest roads that she's ridden on ever up to this point. And, you know, I looked over at her. I said, "Are you wanting to go on?" I told myself I wasn't going to ask her that, but I could just tell that was a tough section. And she looked at me and said, "It's not even an option. You know, we're going on." You know, first of all, we had somebody watching the kids, so it was nice to have a day away and be able to enjoy it and be on a bike with each other. And so she was like, "I'm going to keep doing it." And, you know, I was proud of her for persevering then. There were other times where I could tell she was struggling. And to see at, you know, 64 miles in, the fact that she was able to get through all those demons. And I'm sure it was in her head at different times, just stop, just quit. You know, why? You know, this is silly. It's cold. You're not feeling well. You know, I mean, she fought all day with this. She's had this issue in her upper left leg that has been bothering her for about the past month. And about 15 miles in, it hits. And, I mean, it was just stinging her. There were times that she had to get off the bike and just stretch it out really, you know, hard, really for a long time. And but she kept fighting through it and kept going on. By no means the pace that she wanted, you know, but still she did it.
Yeah. It's not a numbers game.
It's not.
I mean,
she wasn't racing against anybody. That's what I told her at the start of the day. I said, "You're not racing against anyone." I said, "Again, you got the least miles of anybody out here." I said, "Your race is to complete, to get to that finish line, regardless of how long it takes." I said, "Even if, you know, Joffre decides that, you know what, you guys, you're DNF because of how long it's going to take, who cares? Let's go out and ride bikes."
We all knew where the finish line was.
We know, it's a mile from my house. Who cares? Just ride the bike and let's get back to Emporia and let's have a good time. And so we did. And, you know, there were some definitely dark points in the day, but, man, it was just a blast. And to see her get to the finish, to see her, you know, get that 100K sticker, to see her get that first one under her belt, to know that she can do it, was pretty awesome. And so for her now, the whole question is what going forward? Yeah. Because she's definitely had a lot of things and thoughts in her minds before this. And I don't think she still has that answer exactly, to be honest. You know, I don't know if she decides the next one needs to be 100 or maybe the next one needs to be just a more difficult 50. Maybe it needs to be just shooting to up the pace or other things. And so there's a lot of thoughts going on in her mind right now about that. I think a winter trainer for some indoor riding might be in order for her. To make sure that she's staying on the bike and getting in the miles this winter, as opposed to running into what a lot of people do that first winter of not getting on the bike. But the fact that she's excited, that she's looking forward to the next race, that she didn't get a sour feel from being out in those cold temperatures and rough day. Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Absolutely fun day out there. Loved riding with Darren and Alyssa. Closest I've ever been to a podium. Missed it by one spot. Darren got third place in it. I got fourth place, but I also got DFL, I'm pretty sure. So all of you that dropped after the first lap, you missed the best lap. The second lap was a lot of fun.
So. Hey, they dropped, so really they were in last, even if they didn't. Just saying, you didn't come in last, man. You finished it.
Fair enough. We finished it. We had a good time with friends. Speaking of being out on bikes with friends, we've got a lot of social media come in. Let's take a look at what we have. Hey, thanks to everybody that submitted photos using the hashtag #ThisIsGravel and posting them on our Facebook page this week. First up, we're going to start with a photo of actually Neil and his wife out doing Lap the Lakes. What an awesome time for the two of them to enjoy bikes together. Thomas sent in this photo riding in the River Valley in Olympic National Park in Washington. Donald Griggs sent us this photo from the Filthy 50. Rain overnight, turned to freezing rain, snow at ride time, low in the 30s and steady northwest wind. Said he finished, and it was filthy. Kate was over in Missouri riding the Katy Trail.
Levi Bridges was also up at the Filthy 50 gravel race in Stewartville, Minnesota. Joe Klodowski hopped on the Rock Island Trail and then did a little Katy for a little recon on what he hopes to be an epic ride later this year. Greg was out exploring the Heart of Iowa Trail. Todd Zukowski was riding unpaved up in Pennsylvania. What a great event that looked like. And finally, our buddy Isaac was out floating the fat bike in the floodwaters. Thanks to everybody that submitted photos using the hashtag #ThisIsGravel.
Awesome, guys. We love seeing those pictures. I know there was people doing something called the Filthy 50.
Yeah, I did see some of that.
They just look pretty filthy.
Yep.
So definitely fitting. There was Unpaved up there in Pennsylvania, I know, going on this past weekend. A lot of folks were up there too. So love again.
Definitely in the fall swing of events going on right now. Lots of them going on. Speaking of events coming up, Freedom Fest coming up here in Emporia. 16-mile fun ride, 40-mile ride going on with that.
Yep.
Here in a couple weeks. So
lots of stuff. Looking forward to it.
Thanks for watching.